book review on video. This time, Summer of Love by Lisa Mason. Published by Bantam Spectra in 1994. I have to confess that I bought this book in, I think it was 2001. And I've only just read it now. I finished it yesterday. I'm ashamed to say that it's been on the shelf this long, and I really don't know why, because it was a great read, a really great read. I've read most of Mason's other stuff before. I've read her relatively short novels, Spiderweb and Arachne, which, to be honest, I didn't think were all that. They were okay, fine entertainment, pass the time, but they were sort of under-ambitious in scope for my taste. An interesting setting and all that, but failing to live up to her abilities, because I also read her Pangea duology, which I think is amazing, absolutely amazing, fantastic in every way. I cannot recommend those books enough. And I was hoping that this book would be more like Pangea and less like Arachne, and not Spiderweb, but Cyberweb, in fact. Cyberweb, which again, a good read, but nothing special. This book, however, was so much better than that, perhaps not up there with Pangea, but still a great read. The plot is, it's basically to do with time travel that I'm generally not a fan of, but what actually works in this book. It's a story set in the Summer of Love, the summer of 1967 in San Francisco, California. And our hero, kind of hero, has traveled back 500 years from our distant future in order to basically save the world, or save the timeline, which is his specific mission. One person must survive the Summer of Love, and his mission is to find her and keep her safe. And throughout the book, you're never sure whether the person that he thinks he's found, the so-called Axis, is in fact the person he's been sent to find. He believes it, the reader comes to believe it, but you never know until the very end. And of course, he's supposed to be this dispassionate observer that doesn't change anything, doesn't interfere with the past, but getting there and discovering these living, breathing human beings, it's impossible for him to avoid becoming involved. And of course, it's completely against the rules for him to reveal anything about the future, but he breaks that rule big time. And this young guy, Chiron, Cat's Eye and Draco is his name, he changes the lives of several of the people that he comes into contact with. And they, of course, change his life in return. I think the characterizations in this book are just wonderful. I love these characters. I love the description of the setting. Mason lives in Berkeley, California herself, so she probably knows the setting. I'm not sure how old she is. I've always imagined that she must be too young to remember this herself, but she draws a very convincing picture, to my mind, of San Francisco in the hippie era, the Summer of Love, etc. The so-called Axis, the person that Chiron focuses on and decides is his object of his quest, is a young girl named Susan, who has run away from home, which is in Cleveland, Ohio. She's 14 years old, and getting to San Francisco, she calls herself Starbright. She goes there to find her best friend. But of course, she's hardly the only young girl who's traveled from the boondocks, or at least Straitsville, USA, to San Francisco at that period, so what she's looking for is very hard to find. And she quite soon becomes confused about what it is exactly that she's looking for. The world is a big place, bigger than she knew, and she herself has a lot of awakenings to go through. She has to learn to know herself, to understand what she wants, and to understand not least what she's capable of. I think the characterization in both these young people and the others surrounding them, all the young people, adults, good guys and bad guys, it's just wonderful. This book is worth reading for the characters alone. The plot was really good. It's an intriguing story. Time travel actually works in this book. I normally would say that it doesn't work, ever. But in this book, it's a pretty clever conceit. The whole book, as a whole, I think, sets the mood really well. It's convincing. I certainly bought it. It's a great setting, partly the future, which we do get some glimpses of, and partly our own time. And what Mason has to say about our own time is also very interesting. She talks about global warming, things that are very hot right now, 15 years later after this book came out. So she's a bit ahead of her time. I was surprised actually how modern this book seems. Not that 15 years is that long ago, but in politics 15 years is an eternity. I just really bought the story. I bought the setup. I think that this is one of the best Mason books she's written, and if she ever sees this, Miss Mason, I would like to heartily apologize for not reading this book before. I will never let your books gather dust for 8 years again on my bookshelves. So one of my future reviews will hopefully be The Golden 90s by the same author in the same general setting, only 80 years before. If you like good science fiction, well written, convincing, intelligent, great characterization, I would not hesitate to recommend Summer of Love by Lisa Mason. An excellent read.